Welcome to Reality Theory episode 10, the Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, Jeffrey Epstein connection. Now, Chris Tucker is in the news because of a new movie he's in called Air about the Michael Jordan sneaker. It's a real big Nike commercial for Air Jordan, so if you like Air Jordans, you might like it. Other than that, you might want to leave it alone. Jeffrey Epstein is in the news because it's recently come out that he was allegedly sexually blackmailing Bill Gates with knowledge of an affair that Bill Gates was having. And Michael Jackson is in the news because there is a new podcast hosted by the homie Jay Smooth that re-examines Michael Jackson's popularity and also the sexual abuse allegations against him. So first off, we're going to get into Chris Tucker. So how did Chris Tucker meet Michael Jackson? He actually talked about it in an interview with Jay Leno, which we're going to look at right now.
Meet him? I mean, how does that hook up? He seems like such a private guy. How do you get to
Well, we met a very special way, and me and Mike always talk about it. And because I always wanted to meet Mike. I used to, when I was young, everybody in the world imitated him, and I loved him as an entertainer. And I said one day, I was going to meet him. I didn't know how. I went through everybody. I knew everybody in his family before him. I knew his brother Jermaine and everybody. I was like, Jermaine, when we gonna see Mike? We go see I hanging out with Jermaine. When is Mike? So me and Jermaine real good friends, but I never seen Mike. So I was at the Comedy Store one night, not the Comedy Store, but the Laugh Factory. Right. And I was performing one night, and this guy came up to me, and I thought he worked at the club, but it was this guy. He said, my kid has cancer, and he loves you as a comedian, and he's having a benefit at the Laugh Factory. Yeah. He wants you to come and perform. And I said, okay, I'll try to come, and I'll try to come, all right? But I didn't know because I'm always busy. So just so happened the night before, this was months later, the night before he was doing the benefit, I had showed up at the club the night before. And his father came up to me again. He said, tomorrow night is the benefit, and the kid's named Gavin. So I said, okay, tomorrow night I'm not doing it, and I'll be here. He had cancer. So I came and met him. His name is Gavin, and he's a real good friend of mine. I love him to death. He said, he met me. He said, hey, Chris, how you doing? Thanks for coming. And he said, I know Michael Jackson. I was like, yeah, right, yeah, okay. How you doing? You feeling good? He said, all right, yeah, I know Michael Jackson. And I come and find out later he really did know Michael Jackson. So he would always tell me, I said, did Michael call you today? Did you mention me? Really? When can I go to Never Never Land? He was all... He always used to talk about how he went to Never Never Land. I'm like, when you gonna take me? Well, I want you to tell Michael I want to go too. So he used to tell Michael that I know Chris Tucker, and he used to da-da-da. And finally, one day I was filming Rush Hour 2. I'll never forget this. I was in the middle of a scene, and Gavin's bad too. He's real bad, but I love him. But we was filming the scene, me and Jack, and Gavin runs on the set in the middle of the set, and he comes and he says, Michael Jackson wants to speak to you on the phone. I said, what? He said, Michael's on the phone. I said, Greg, cut. Jackie, do another stunt scene. I gotta go. So I went in the trailer, and Michael was on the phone, and Michael said, I love your work, and I want to meet you. And I was like, I want to meet you too. I love you too. I love you, Chris. I love you too, Michael. So we finally hooked up. He said, you come to New York, because he was working on his album. He said, you come to New York, we hook up, and so we finally met, and now it's all because of this kid, Gavin, and he's doing well now. He was, Michael was with him when he was doing chemotherapy and all that stuff, so now he's doing well. He doesn't have cancer anymore. Oh, that's great.
Good for you. That's great. That's a great story.
So we see Chris Tucker talking about, it was actually Gavin Arvizo who introduced Chris Tucker to Michael Jackson. Now, Gavin Arvizo would later accuse Michael Jackson of sexually abusing him, and it was Gavin Arvizo who was in the documentary Living with Michael Jackson that kind of reled to the big scandal and eventual prosecution of Michael Jackson for sex abuse. So here's Gavin Arvizo.
Gavin Arvizo first became known to the public in Martin Bashir's 2003 documentary, Living with Michael Jackson. In one extraordinary scene, the pop star is seen holding hands with a 13-year-old Gavin, a former cancer sufferer who spent a lot of time at Jackson's Neverland Ranch. When challenged by Bashir about his admission to sleeping in the same room, and sometimes in the same bed as children unrelated to him, Michael Jackson professed, quote, "It's not sexual. We're going to sleep. I tuck them in. It's very charming. It's very sweet." As a result of this, the controversial documentary caused an intense...
So, Gavin Arvizo, Chris Tucker and Michael Jackson's mutual friend, when he appeared on the Living with Michael Jackson documentary, like, it was very scandalous. That's when he talked about it's not sexual. I have children sleeping in my bed all the time. And this led the LAPD to start reinvestigating Michael Jackson and this relationship. Now, during this time, after the documentary aired, Michael Jackson had Chris Tucker fly Gavin to Miami on his private plane, to Miami to be with Michael Jackson. And according to Gavin, while Gavin was in Miami with Michael Jackson was like giving him wine and Coke bottles and molesting him. So depending on who you believe, one could see Chris Tucker as a potential enabler of Michael Jackson's predatory behavior. So and then Michael Jackson used Chris Tucker as his like star witness in his trial, in the 2005 trial that followed the Living with Michael Jackson documentary and the Gavin Arvizo allegations. So here's what happened. Tucker testified that he first met the accuser at the Laugh Factory after the teen's dad came up to him and told him his son loved me and was dying of cancer, said Tucker. Then the family asked Tucker to attend a fundraiser for the accuser. Tucker agreed, then testified that they told him the fundraiser didn't make any money and they need some money. Tucker wired them $1,500 and later took the accuser and his siblings on a shopping spree, as well as oftentimes taking them on outings with his own son. He eventually gave the accuser his phone number and said the accuser started calling him on a regular basis. In the final testimony of the defense case, Tucker singled out the accuser's mother, who he testified had mental problems. I told him to watch out for the mother because I felt suspicious, Tucker said. You need to watch out. Be careful. Tucker said he thought the accuser, whom Tucker befriended in 2000 as the boy was battling cancer, was smart and cunning, telling jurors the boy would reference his illness when asking Tucker for money. The accuser's younger brother, a key prosecution witness in the trial, was even more cunning, Tucker said, to the point that the Rush Hour star felt he needed to check the brother's pockets before he left my house. Tucker also said he flew the family by private jet in Miami in February 2003 because the accuser told him that he wanted to go be there with Jackson, contradicting assertions by both the family and the prosecution that the trip was part of an effort by Jackson's camp to enlist their peers with the news conference. So again, if one were to believe the allegations, one would have to look at Chris Tucker as a victim basher, a blamer, and again, as an enabler, protecting someone who's an abuser. So he becomes friends with this kid. He's on Jay Leno talking about what a great kid he is. But then when he's testifying on behalf of Michael Jackson, he's talking about what a smart, cunning kid is, how shady his brother is, and bashing his mother. So depending on your point of view, Chris Tucker played a very central role in the Gavin Arvizo scandal that kind of led to Michael Jackson's downfall and his prosecution. But he's not the only person who he introduced or was connected to with Michael Jackson. Now, for those familiar with Brett Ratner was a hip-hop director originally. He got cool with Russell Simmons while going to NYU, and eventually he wound up being a movie director. He wound up directing I think it was Money Talks first for Chris Tucker, and then he directed the Rush Hour franchise, which was extremely, extremely popular. Now, let's go look at Brett Ratner and his relationship with Michael Jackson. So Brett Ratner, one of the things he likes claiming is that Meyer Lansky is his homeboy, like a kind of father figure to him. And another father figure he has is Al Malnik, who Reader's Digest called the successor to Meyer Lansky. Now, for those unfamiliar with Meyer Lansky is an infamous Jewish gangster. If you've seen The Godfather, Hyman Roth is based on him, Michael's nemesis from Godfather 2. And the quote, "We're bigger than U.S. Steel," actually comes directly from Meyer Lansky when he was talking about the Mafia Syndicate, which was the combined Jewish gangsters and Italian gangsters who were kind of running things in the 40s and 50s, that they were actually bigger than the biggest American corporation at the time, U.S. Steel. So Chris Tucker is friends with Michael Jackson, and Chris Tucker introduces Michael Jackson to Brett Ratner, and Brett Ratner and Michael Jackson become friends, and they had a bit of a disturbing friendship. And let's look at the friendship between Brett Ratner, Chris Tucker's friend, and Michael Jackson, Chris Tucker's friend.
In the Redman video. So
what a credit.
Yeah.
Wow. That's Redman for you.
And now Michael Jackson, I know you're a friend of Michael Jackson's.
Yeah.
Did you meet him from a music video?
No, I met him, God, when I did the first Rush Hour, and that's a long, crazy story, but
people, you know, don't really know Michael as well as I did, really. And
most people don't.
Well, yeah, but they think they know him, but he was probably one of the funniest human beings ever, and he would...
For real?
No, really, and all he wanted to do was practical jokes on people, and I'll never forget, I would sleep in the Elizabeth Taylor suite when she wasn't there at Neverland.
Okay.
And, you know, you always felt like you were being watched constantly, you know, like there was hidden cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was sleeping one night, and his voice, because there's an intercom system, and he goes, "Brett?" I go, "Yes." I was like sleeping. I woke up. He goes, "Are you sleeping?" I go, "Yes." He goes, "Wake up. I'm sending Kato to come get you." And I'm like, he had a limo driver who was a short Japanese guy named Kato that he would make wear a tuxedo and a hat. And he had the longest stretch limousine you've ever seen in my life. So Kato comes, he goes, "You could stay in your jammies." So I stayed in my pajamas. I go, "Where are we going?" "We're going to 7-Eleven. "What are we doing?" He goes, "You'll see. Here, put this on." I go, "What is that?" It was a mask. I said, "I don't need a mask, Michael." He puts on I go, "I'm not Michael Jackson. Maybe you need a mask." He puts on a Hulk mask and says, "Go into the bathroom. Meet me in the bathroom." I go, "This is getting strange, okay?" 4 in the morning, we're in Santa Barbara in a 7-Eleven. "You want me to meet you?" "Buy some balloons." He comes in the bathroom. We start filling up water balloons, and he literally sends me out to the car. We filled up about 100 balloons. We get back in the car. I'm like, "Where are we going?" He goes, "You'll see." We're driving down empty road. I said, "What are we looking for?" He goes, "You'll see." No one is in sight. It's 4 in the morning in Santa Barbara off the freeway. All of a sudden, there's like, I guess he must have been like a homeless guy just walking on the side of the expressway. And the guy is just literally walking like this. And Michael Jackson says, "Kato, hit the brakes!" and he slams on the brakes. "Arr!" And I literally look out the window, and this guy's like this. Like he thinks that he's gonna be attacked. And all of a sudden, Michael Jackson pops out of the sunroof with the Hulk mask on. Imagine how scared this guy was at 4 in the morning, and he goes like this, and the guy's like this. He doesn't know which way to go, and he can't see. It's only a water balloon, and he whips the water balloon at him, and the guy just starts running in the other direction. Goes, "Kato, throw it in reverse!" And literally, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, and we catch up to the guy, and the guy just stops, and he just hits him with the water balloon, and he goes, "Kato, go!" And we run off, and I'm like, do you think the police are not going to know Michael Jackson with a Hulk mask and a stretch limousine is throwing? And we laughed the whole night. I couldn't even go to sleep. It was like the craziest thing I ever
That's the craziest thing that's ever happened.
That's a really sick story right there. So they're basically talking about torturing homeless people with water balloons and masks. And that's Michael Jackson's idea of a good time. And both Brett Ratner and Jimmy Kimmel think that's funny. Like, that's crazy. Imagine, God forbid, you know, you wind up as a homeless person, you're struggling to, you know, get food, you don't have a place to stay for the night, and you're walking on the highway in the middle of the night, and then all of a sudden you see a strange man with a Hulk mask coming out of a limo, throwing something at you. You don't know what it is. You run away. The limo chases you, and then he continues to throw these, I mean, I don't know if they're water balloons, bombs, but that's really sick, and that's not a practical joke. A practical joke is something people play on their friends, right? Ha ha ha, you got me. That's funny. A practical joke isn't something someone plays on homeless people. So, yeah, it doesn't look good for Michael Jackson in this quote, and also for Brett Ratner enabling him. And it also makes me wonder, like, what he was doing with Chris Tucker. Like, what was he doing with his other friends? What were Michael Jackson and Chris Tucker doing for a fun time? All right, so now let's look at Al Malnik. Al Malnik is Brett Ratner's father figure. Like I said before, he was the heir to the Meyer Lansky crime syndicate, according to Reader's Digest. So we have here, so this is in October 22nd of 2003, right before the documentary dropped and the big scandal happened. Michael Jackson starts hanging around with Al Malnik. Michael Jackson is raising eyebrows with a new friend and associate. The king of pop has become close to Florida businessman Al Malnik, who has been linked with organized crime, says a source. Although Malnik denied any association with organized crime, published figures have called him a reputed organized crime figure, and the government reports have outlined businesses and possible criminal ties between Malnik and the late alleged mobster Meyer Lansky. Jackson hosted a party for Malnik at his restaurant, The Forge, in Miami Beach, and has been staying at his house on and off as a long-term guest, says a source. Jackson's rep left off the story, blah, 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 blah. So let's look at some pictures. There we have, that's Al Malnik, the legendary alleged gangster, and Michael Jackson not looking too happy. And that wig, it looks a little blackfacey. And there's other pictures where Al Malnik's white family members and friends are wearing like Afro wigs, which is a little blackfacey. But looks like Michael's degrading himself a little for this. Yeah. And now we have Brett Ratner and Michael Jackson at the same party. Again, Michael doesn't look too happy. Brett looks kind of happy. Michael looks a little ridiculous, to be honest with you. Not that he didn't look ridiculous before, but the afro with already the plastic surgery is kind of crazy. So that's Brett Ratner introduces Michael Jackson to Al Malnik. As you see, Michael Jackson starts staying at Al Malnik's house. Al Malnik starts giving Michael Jackson a lot of money. There we have another picture. See, we see Chris Tucker to the far right. Michael Jackson. This might be the You Rock My World video shoot, because that looks like what Michael Jackson was wearing in that video. And there we have, to the far left is Al Malnik's son, Sharif Malnik. I think he married like a Saudi Arabian princess, or maybe Al Malnik did, one of them did. As Al Malnik, Serena Williams, who was dating Brett Ratner at the time, and Brett Ratner at the far right. Now, this didn't really wind up too well between Al Malnik and Michael Jackson. Eventually, Michael Jackson turned against Al Malnik for certain financial reasons. So here they say Al Malnik put some pictures up of him and Michael Jackson after Michael Jackson died, and it retorts with this. This is laughable. The two men were indeed friends at one time, but there's a reason the photographs date all the way back to 2003. The two men had a falling out because Jackson began to believe that Malnik, who has known mafia ties and was once a close associate of Meyer Lansky, was trying to wrangle Jackson's rights to half of the Beatles' catalog of songs from him, rights that are worth an estimated $500 million. The source of this information is Gordon Novel, a character of intrigue himself. Yes, he is. From the Kennedy assassination, Watergate, and Waco. It's a lot of crazy stories. We'll get into Gordon Novel later. Novell worked in the Lyndon Johnson administration and spent years working as investigator for former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark. Vanity Fair's Maureen Orth first reported that Novel had met with Jackson in 2005 in an attempt to get the investigator to find proof that Malnik was part of a conspiracy involving Sony's Tommy Mottola and film director Brett Ratner, a Malnik prodigy, to take over his assets. So Chris Tucker introduces Michael Jackson to Brett Ratner. Brett Ratner introduces Michael Jackson to Al Malnik. And then later, Michael Jackson says there's a conspiracy between Brett Ratner and Al Malnik to try and steal the Sony ATV Beatles catalog, which is the publishing rights to the Beatles songs, which is worth $500 million back then, might be worth $1 billion right now. It was Michael Jackson's like big money thing that allowed him to spend a lot of money because he owned something that was really almost invaluable. According to Novel, Jackson was lured to Malnik's house in Miami Beach by film director Brett Ratner to see a beautiful house, so beautiful it would make him catatonic or throat. He said that once he was there, however, Malnik, who Jackson claimed has mafia ties, wanted to put his fingers in the singer's business. Jackson also said he received a call from Tommy Mottola while he was there, which aroused suspicion. I contacted Novel over the weekend, and he confirmed meeting with Jackson at Neverland Valley during the time of the 2005 trial. He told me that he was originally contacted by Jackson's brother Jermaine, and that Michael and the family wanted Novel to gather proof of the Malnik-Mottola conspiracy, and further find evidence that Mottola was behind the criminal child molestation charges. The ultimate goal was to blow out the trial out the water so Jackson wouldn't have to face prison time. Now, this is interesting. I definitely believe Michael Jackson was guilty of child molestation, but did Mottola set him up or Al Malnik set him up? Because that documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, like whoever was Michael Jackson's handlers that allowed him to do that, allowed him to talk about sleeping with boys in his bed and hold hands with a young boy after he'd already like beat a child molestation case in the 90s with Jordy Chandler. I think he had to pay like $25 million. And he comes back And he does this interview, and it's that interview which leads to the investigation again. So I'm sure maybe he was framed for being a child molester. I mean, not framed, but set up. I mean, he was obviously a child molester, but he didn't need to put it out there so bad, like in that interview, which was done at the time he was hanging with Al Malnik. The whole thing centered on Tommy Mottola setting him up. Novel told me Mottola and him were with odds, and Jackson's information was that Mottola and Malnik got together to fuck him. He said he believed Malnik was representing the mob. Okay, so Michael Jackson felt. He said Jackson had a special loathing for Malnik because he felt betrayed by him. When I told him Malnik was saying that Jackson had made him executor of his estate, he was dubious. He had split up with Malnik, said Novell. He never said anything about Malnik being executor as well, and based on how pissed off Jackson was at him at the time, I still wouldn't believe it on a bet. All right, so this is all very interesting. Al Malnik, Michael Jackson, the Mafia, Meyer Lansky, child molestation, Brett Ratner, and Chris Tucker is at the center of all of this. All of this is, so all right. So let's get into Chris Tucker's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So how did this happen? How did he get to meet Jeffrey Epstein? Let's look at it. Oh, man. So here's Chris Tucker talking about how he traveled with Jeffrey Epstein and how that happened. We're not going to get into how he met Michael Jackson. Or maybe we will. We'll see.
You knew Jeffrey Epstein, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. You know, we flew Bill Clinton and a lot of different, well, that was a humanitarian trip to Africa. And yeah. I met him on that trip because it was his plane. I didn't know who plane we was getting on, but it was a whole bunch of dignitary people who was with a delegation. And yeah, I met him, and you know, you don't know people, what they do in their private lives. So yeah.
But tell me this, Chris. You was on this private plane, and you could tell that it was a private plane because they called it, what is Lolita Express?
Oh yeah, it was a private plane. Yes. Oh yes.
But wait a minute. You didn't never go to that island, did you?
No. I don't know where that thing at. No. I don't think. Hey, we was going to Africa to save lives.
All right, speaking of the things,
all right. So out of the mouths of babes, that young woman said the plane was enough. And here Chris Tucker is laughing about all the molestation and sex trafficking that was going on the Lolita Express and going on Epstein's Island, which is really funny. And he's kind of denying, saying, hey, I just knew him. I was there for humanitarian reasons. Now, he was there with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey. Now, Bill Clinton is not a humanitarian person. Bill Clinton doesn't do things for the benefit of the world. He does things for the benefit of himself. So the Clinton Foundation, which, you know, is ostensibly a charity, is not really a charity. It's a pay-to-play slush fund for the Clintons. So if you give money to the Clintons, if you fly them around or you do something for them, then you can get political favors later. And it seems like Chris Tucker's kind of downplay his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein a little bit because it knows him a little better than he's letting on. And we're going to look at it here. So here we go. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein's ex-housekeeper. Facebook photos show her with Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, and that's not all. So there's Jeffrey Epstein's housekeeper from his New York house with Bill Clinton. Okay. Boom. There's Jeffrey Epstein with his famous Harvard sweater, which is really bad. And Harvard really needs to, I mean, that's my next episode. Harvard needs to make some big donations to some poor people or whatever for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. That's horrible that they let him in their ranks after he was a convicted child molester. You're supposed to be like the best college in the United States, the standard of academic excellence and integrity. And you let this piece of shit child molester, convicted child molester, have an office at your university, hang around with Alan Dershowitz and all sorts of other, Larry Sumner, all sorts of college professors, but it's a whole nother episode, so I'm not gonna get too deep to Alan Dershowitz and Harvard. There's Bill Clinton again. There is Prince Andrew. I don't know who that is. And there we have Chris Tucker. So he knew him more than just the plane. He was at his house. So you had some type of relationship with both Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. And according to a woman from South Africa, Bill Clinton was used by Jeffrey Epstein as a kind of enabler so that Bill Clinton could get women to trust him, or Jeffrey Epstein could get women to trust him and rape them. So while they were taking the planes in South Africa, you don't just stay on the planes all the time. They got off and landed, and they'd be in various places. One places they were in Cape Town, South Africa. So here we see here, a South African businesswoman who was repeatedly raped by Jeffrey Epstein says former President Bill Clinton gave the late pedophile credibility. Julie Bryant told the Daily Beast she met Epstein in Cape Town in 2002, age 20, so legal age, but a little on the young side, especially for Jeffrey Epstein, who was probably 50 or 60 at the time. She was invited to dinner with Epstein, Mr. Clinton, and actors Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker, the news reported. So these guys aren't just doing humanitarian things. I haven't seen any pictures of them like giving out water in Africa or, or I see pictures of them on the plane, and we're going to watch some of that right now. So let's watch what they were doing in Africa. So this is what they were doing in Africa. Oh, come on. It doesn't want to play. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. This is them on the plane. Well, I'll just shuffle through it. Illuminati's trying to get me. All right. So Michael Jackson was also tied to Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of people do not know that Michael Jackson's was found in Epstein's infamous Black Book, and that according to Bradley Edwards, who was a lawyer for Virginia Roberts and a number of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims said that Michael Jackson came to Jeffrey Epstein's house. So that's very interesting. And there's one other kind of big tie who ties everybody together, who ties Michael Jackson to Jeffrey Epstein, to Chris Tucker, to Bill Clinton, to Al Malnik, and it's this guy, Ron Burkle. Now, Ron Burkle is a friend of Bill Clinton. He actually flew with Chris Tucker and Kevin Spacey on that infamous Africa trip, but he also had his own airline known as Air FUCK1. The billionaire playboy and Air F1, Bill Clinton, facing several new sexual assault charges. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton has been accused of sexually assaulting 4 women. The explosive new charges revealed by sources within the Democratic Party and an official who served in both the Clinton and Obama administrations, Daily Mail reports. According to Edward Klein, former editor-in-chief of the New York Times Magazine and author of 4 books on the Clintons, the latest incidents to emerge took place after the 71-year-old left the Oval Office in 2001. It was during this time in the early 2000s when Clinton was hired by Playboy billionaire Ron Burkle, Klein writes, to work at the investors' Ucalpa company. So just like Jeffrey Epstein, he's this kind of Playboy billionaire. Clinton helped Burkle generate businesses and flew around the world with a flock of beautiful women on Burkle's private jet, not unlike Jeffrey Epstein, who flew Bill Clinton around with beautiful women on his private jet, who we can't see because the Twitter video isn't working. Sorry, guys. According to reports, they're asking for money to keep quiet, and if the legal negotiations fail, they'll go public. So you have, Ron Burkle, Jeffrey Epstein, close friends. Ron Burkle was in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. Ghislaine Maxwell was actually even on a plane with Ron Burkle and Bill Clinton, just like she was on a lot of plane rides with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton. So let's see what's going on with Ron Burkle. who was we'll get into his connection to Michael Jackson, but he was a financial advisor to Michael Jackson after Al Malnik, but I think they still continue to work together. Yeah, I got it. Ghislaine Maxwell used Bill Clinton to escape from her sick partnership with Jeffrey Epstein. As it's revealed, the former president joined them on 2 previously undisclosed trips to India, China, Japan, and Taiwan. A new podcast reveals that Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet in February 2005 while visiting Japan, Taiwan, and China. Clinton also flew on a private jet owned by billionaire Ron Burkle with Ghislaine Maxwell as a passenger during a trip to India in 2003. Now, all these trips on airplanes, Bill Clinton is not, I don't know. If you believe Bill Clinton is a wonderful philanthropist, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell for you. So if he's traveling to these places, he's either doing it to make money for people or have sex and have fun for himself. So, okay, that is Bill Clinton and Ghislaine Maxwell and Ron Burkle. And here we see that Ron Burkle was definitely on the same flight as Chris Tucker, Kevin Spacey, Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell. President Clinton, that's Epstein's flight log right there. President Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, Cindy Lopez, Shantae Davis, that's another one of Epstein's girls, Andrei Mitrovic, I'm guessing that's sort of Epstein's girls, Doug Bann, that's Clinton's like right-hand man, David Slade, Jim Kenney, Eric Nonix, Rodney Slater, Casey, and Laura Wasserman, Ron Burkle, and Gail Smith. Now, I covered Gail Smith before in the article, and she is definitely a CIA agent in Africa. She doesn't do good things over there. So this is none of these people are humanitarians. All these people are capitalists, concerned of their wealth, and people like Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton use philanthropy as a front to exploit poor people, abuse women, blackmail powerful people to make them do bad things. So, yeah. Also, we can kind of see right here, Ron Burkle. I don't know where my Ron Burkle Chris Tucker picture is. Let me put that up in a second. Ron Burkle. Oh. Come on, Twitter. There we go. Oh, that's the other one. Oh, gotta be this one like that. There's a lot of them. There we go. So these are people, according to Virginia Roberts, who have knowledge of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's sexual trafficking, misconduct, and interaction with underage minors, other than John Luke Brunel, who was, also accused of sex trafficking himself. We also have Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted, and then Ron Burkle. So I don't know what's going on now. Ron Burkle actually bought Neverland after he met Michael Jackson through Jeffrey Epstein. No, not through Jeffrey Epstein, through Jesse Jackson. And Jesse Jackson, if you watch a couple of my previous episodes, Jesse Jackson is definitely an FBI agent, CIA agent, Fed. He's not a good person. So he introduces Ron Burkle to Michael Jackson. Ron Burkle quickly becomes Michael Jackson's financial advisor, and he actually stops Michael Jackson from signing a deal, I think, with Damon Dash's brother, to get out of bankruptcy, and he kind of refinances his own stuff. So I don't know if he was just wanted to be nice to Michael Jackson, or he wanted that Sony ATV like Al Malnik did. But just recently, Ron Burkle, who's tied to everybody, he bought Neverland. So he owns Neverland. So he owns the place where the ghosts of molested children live, if you believe what I believe. So let's get this picture of Chris Tucker with Michael Jackson, and then I'll just do a little closing statement. Here we go. Here is Chris Tucker and Michael Jackson coming up. Not Chris Tucker and Michael Jackson. Chris Tucker and Ron Burkle. This is 2014. Chris Tucker, Ron Burkle. So Ron Burkle seems to be the only one left, man. And I think Chris Tucker might know something about Ron Burkle. And I hope I just want to tell you, this is my little closing statement. So I'm gonna stop my share and speak to you guys as an emotional former Chris Tucker fan that I am. When Chris Tucker started on Def Comedy Jam, I was such a huge fan. He had this great Michael Jackson impersonation where he would pretend to be Michael Jackson being a pimp. Get out the car, Tito! Like that was bad, but he did it really well. Friday, he was amazing in this movie. Friday, it was one of the best independent comedies, a low-budget comedy with a bunch of talented Black actors, and really great movie. He was amazing in this movie, Dead Presidents, by the Hughes brothers, in which he played a drug-addicted Vietnam veteran turned bank robber. And really, so I really thought that Chris Tucker would be like bigger than Will Smith, bigger than Eddie Murphy. Like, it seemed like he had everything going for him. And then he met Michael Jackson. And then he met Jeffrey Epstein, and his career like sucks now. Like, I watched the Netflix special that he had; it was horrible. He hosted the BET Awards. I don't know. I'm not gonna say he's a clone because the probably is a conspiracy theorist, but something definitely happened to him. I think something happened to his soul, and it's really funny to me that like he says he doesn't want to do the next Friday because of like religious reasons, but you hang around with pedophiles like Jeffrey Epstein, alleged sexual assaulters like Bill Clinton, or alleged rapists too, you know. So it really gets into the kind of the mafia right here. Now, this is where the mafia kind of brings together Jeffrey Epstein and Al Malnik. So Jeffrey Epstein's mentor or benefactor was Les Wexner. Now, according to Whitney Webb and Bob Fitzrockis, two excellent journalists, Les Wexner was connected to the mafia and connected to Meyer Lansky. So they ran together. And also Al Malnik is also connected to Meyer Lansky and the mob, as is Jeffrey Epstein. So, and it was, according to Michael Jackson, Al Malnik was the mafia trying to get Michael Jackson's very, 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 very valuable rights to Beatles songs in the Sony ATV catalog, which is like $1 billion catalog. So Chris Tucker got introduced to Michael Jackson by Gavin Arvizo, and Gavin Arvizo would accuse Michael Jackson of child molestation, and Chris Tucker totally stabbed Gavin in the back, got character assassinated him, helped Michael Jackson get off. Even taking the little kid on the plane to see Michael Jackson after he's being accused of, if someone's being accused of being a child molester, and if you don't know, are you gonna bring a child on your plane to see them? And the Jeffrey Epstein, so given that Michael Jackson was in Florida the same time Jeffrey Epstein was in Florida, and Michael Jackson, knew Jeffrey Epstein, I'm not surprised if through Al Malnik or the Florida gangster scene that Jeffrey Epstein also knew Michael Jackson and Chris Tucker at the same time. So I think the kind of running thread is that Bill Clinton met Chris Tucker first, and then he introduced Chris Tucker to Jeffrey Epstein, and Chris Tucker had no idea whose plane he was getting on. No idea. I'm just getting on some guy's plane. No clue. Like some rich billionaire's plane, you have no idea who this person is. But I think he would have to, like being in Florida, being around Al Malnik. So Ron Burkle's the only one still out there, guys. So I think Ron Burkle needs to answer some questions, and Chris Tucker needs to answer some questions. This case isn't over. No Johns, nobody who paid for sex trafficking has been convicted. Virginia Roberts is saying that Ron Burkle knew about the sex trafficking going on. Chris Tucker was very close to Jeffrey Epstein as well, and he seems to be an enabler of sexual predators with both Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Jackson. He definitely enabled them, added to their fame and their clout, by hanging out with them in South Africa and helping them get girls, because, celebrities. Anyways, so this is just a little bit. We're going to get deeper, but that is the connection between Jeffrey Epstein, Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, and also other important figures like Al Malnik and your guy. Oh, I can't believe I'm forgetting this stupid guy's name already. Ron Burkle. Ron Burkle, the color Burkle. But all right, man. Try and do a new style of episode this way. Just, hit y'all with stuff on the internet. Hit y'all with some good information. That's the latest episode, man. Stay tuned to next episode 11. That's it. We done.